Have you ever wondered why you still feel like a failure, even when you've checked off everything society told you would make you successful? You studied hard, you got the degree, you landed the job, maybe you even have the partner, the apartment, the salary you thought would finally make you feel like you'd made it. But somewhere deep down, there's this nagging sense that something is off, like you're wearing a costume of success that doesn't quite fit. Or maybe it's the opposite. You're nowhere near where you thought you'd be by now, and you can't shake the feeling that you're falling behind, as if you took a wrong turn somewhere that you can't undo. You scroll through social media or walk through your neighborhood, and it feels like everyone else is moving forward while you're stuck in place, wondering why the life you were promised hasn't materialized. This matters, really matters, because so many people live trapped in silent comparison, measuring their lives against templates that were never designed for them in the first place. And the cost of that isn't just low self-esteem or occasional sadness. It's a life of hesitation, guilt, confusion, and sometimes complete emotional paralysis. It's saying no to opportunities because you don't feel ready, or yes to paths that drain you because you're afraid of being left behind. So today, we're going to try to unpack what might actually be going on when you feel like a failure, and, more importantly, what to do with that feeling. Because here's the truth, that feeling isn't random. It's not a sign that you're broken, it's often a signal that you're trying to live someone else's version of success. Your life isn't a checklist, it's an RPG. Let's start with a concept that might feel strange at first but tends to click for people once they reflect on it. Imagine your life as an RPG, a role-playing game. You were born with a specific set of stats. Maybe high intelligence but low charisma. Maybe great creativity but poor focus. Or maybe your childhood gave you early skills like caretaking or people-pleasing because those were what you needed to survive. The point is, everyone you meet is playing their own version of this game. Different starting zones. Different difficulty settings. Different skills, classes, and, most importantly, different storylines. But the mistake so many of us make is this: we try to live someone else's game. We see what quests they're doing, what loot they're picking up, and we assume that if we follow the same route, we'll feel the same kind of fulfillment. That's where the feeling of failure really begins. Not because you're actually failing, but because you're comparing your unique stats to someone else's playthrough. And since the game was never designed for you to play it their way, it's always going to feel like you're behind, like you're not good enough, like you're missing some secret everyone else knows. What makes this even more disorienting is that even people who seem to be doing well by conventional standards often carry that same weight of inadequacy. Success by external measures doesn't actually solve that feeling. I see this all the time, people with high-paying jobs, families, stability, who still say they feel like a disappointment. That's because our feelings don't respond to logic. You can't talk yourself out of feeling like a failure by listing your achievements. That part of you that feels like you're not good enough doesn't care how much money you make or how many people say they're proud of you. It cares whether you're doing something that aligns with your values, your temperament, and your inner purpose. So it becomes a trap. You think, maybe if I just get the next thing, the promotion, the partner, the praise, then I'll feel okay. And maybe it helps for a little while. But then the doubt creeps back in, because you're still not playing your game. And after all, if that game doesn't fit, I think it's worth asking, why do we keep playing it? The myth of the right path. One of the biggest sources of this problem is the idea that there's only one right path: school, college, job, marriage, house, retirement. That script might work for some people, but for others, following that structure feels like wearing a jacket that doesn't quite fit. It looks fine from a distance, but it's tight in the shoulders, awkward in the sleeves, and you're constantly adjusting just to feel okay in it. And here's the thing, that path was designed for a different time. A lot of the traditional milestones were built around older economic and social structures. But the world has changed. We live in a time where the internet can turn pixel art or chess streaming into a career. The boundaries that used to define career and value and contribution are dissolving. So if you're trying to follow a path that was never meant for your personality, your background, or the current world we live in, it makes sense that it's not working for you. that doesn't mean you're lost. It means you need to take a different direction. And sometimes, it takes getting lost to realize that you need to draw your own version of the map. That might sound strange, but a lot of people end up discovering their purpose not by succeeding, but by failing at something they were never meant to pursue long term. Maybe you dropped out. Maybe you burned out. Maybe you just couldn't keep going down a path that was slowly draining you. At the time, that probably felt like defeat. But in hindsight, you might start to realize that it created space for something else to emerge, something more honest, something more aligned with who you actually are. The mistake people often make is trying to go back and fix that failure, rather than asking what it's pointing them toward. Because failure often contains wisdom, but only if we're willing to listen to it. And once you start listening, you might realize that your judgment of yourself has been based on the wrong criteria all along. Measuring by the wrong metrics. So I'll say it again, a huge part of why people feel inadequate is that they're evaluating themselves using someone else's metrics. If you're someone who thrives on creativity and independence but you're comparing yourself to someone in a structured corporate role, you'll always feel behind, not because you're not capable, but because this is just not who you are. Imagine someone who's planting a garden but keeps getting upset that it's not growing like a skyscraper. It's not that they're doing something wrong. It's that they're building something completely different. But if they keep measuring their progress by height alone, they'll miss the fact that their garden is thriving in its own way. What you need to ask yourself is, what game am I actually playing? And do your goals, your expectations, and your comparisons align with that? Because if they don't, the feeling of failure is inevitable. Follow the pull. To figure that out, it helps to pay close attention to what pulls you in. Because your interests matter, even if they seem worthless at first. A lot of people dismiss what they enjoy. They say, I like video games, but that's not useful, or I'm drawn to writing, but that's not realistic. But history is full of people who took something everyone else thought was useless and turned it into something meaningful. 10 or 15 years ago, gaming seemed like a waste of time. Today, it's a multi-billion-dollar industry. You can make a living designing, streaming, analyzing, or writing about games. The same is true for art, storytelling, fashion, coding, design, even memes. The world has opened up new lanes, but the first step is taking your own interests seriously. People often ignore their interests because they don't see an immediate path to success. But that's not the point. The point is to start exploring. Start developing the skill. Start seeing if there's a way to turn it into something you can offer the world. Not every passion has to become a career, but they're often a clue towards something meaningful. And once you start following those clues, the path forward becomes clearer, but only if you're willing to stop and ask what they're pointing to. The hard truth about authentic paths. This sounds simple, right? But what do you do when you don't know what path to follow? You start by asking questions that no one else can answer for you. What do you like? What do you care about? What do you naturally spend time on, even when no one asks you to? These might seem like small or vague questions, but they're incredibly important. Because your deeper sense of purpose doesn't usually appear in the form of a job title. It starts as a subtle pull, a curiosity, a moment of energy in the middle of a tired week, a piece of content you can't stop thinking about, or a topic that lights you up in a way nothing else does. If you never stop to notice those things, you might spend years trying to squeeze yourself into roles that don't fit while completely ignoring the clues your life is giving you about where you actually belong. And if you do notice them and take them seriously, you might find yourself walking a path you didn't expect, one that doesn't look traditional but still leads somewhere worthwhile. However, I think it's also important to acknowledge that alternative paths aren't easy. Just because something is more authentic doesn't mean it's effortless. In fact, the unconventional route often requires even more discipline, because there's less structure, less guidance, and fewer safety nets. But that doesn't mean it's not possible. The tools and platforms exist. The communities are out there. The knowledge is accessible, if you're willing to be patient and persistent, and if you're open to experimenting, iterating, and failing along the way. People get discouraged because they think if it were the right path, it would feel easy. But that's not how it works. The right path still involves hard work. The difference is that the hard work feels worth it. Self-acceptance is the key. Here, the key to your progress is going to be self-acceptance. Because after spending so much time navigating a path that doesn't resemble anything traditional, it's easy to start doubting not just the road you're on, but the person walking it. Maybe you've chosen something unconventional. Maybe you've let go of something that once seemed safe. Or maybe you're still figuring things out in a world that doesn't offer many clear signs. That uncertainty, when left unexamined, often turns inward. We stop questioning the system, and we start questioning ourselves. And maybe the most important piece of all this is learning to accept who you are as you are. It means starting from a place of honesty. It means recognizing your strengths, your weaknesses, your weird quirks, your limitations, and your gifts. So many people waste years trying to become more like someone else, more productive, more disciplined, more extroverted, more stable. But very few people stop and ask, what kind of life actually fits me? If you can accept the character you rolled, with all its flaws and talents, you can finally start to build a life that makes sense. Closing the gap. So if you feel like a failure, consider the possibility that you're just playing the wrong game. Maybe you're using someone else's map, someone else's scorecard, someone else's goals. The more you try to succeed on their terms, the further you get from your own. Start with where you are. Start with what you care about. Start with the character you rolled, and begin playing your RPG, not someone else's. That's where things start to change. Thank you for listening. I hope this conversation was helpful. Take care, and I'll see you in the next one.